Hey guys, welcome back to our video on performing the major service on a Ferrari 360 series. In this part, I'm going to be focusing on doing the engine oil change and our gearbox transmission fluid, so our oil in that as well. So that's where I'm going to start. Join me at the back of the car and I'll walk you through the process. Let me first walk you through all the tools needed for the gearbox transmission oil change. So obviously, first of all, I've got my oil. So I've got 4 litres of Mobile 1. It's fully synthetic. It's 75W-90. The gearbox actually only takes 3.5 litres, and it's more likely that I'm only going to get about 3 out of it. Better to have a little bit more. Also recommended is Redline NS. Apparently that gives a smoother shift. Unfortunately, I'd already ordered the Mobile 1, so I'll try the Redline NS next time and let you know if that's any good. Alright, tools. 14mm hex. That is for our drain plug at the bottom. I've got a 12mm hex. That is for our filler on the side of the gearbox over here, which is also our level checker. I've got a 22mm spanner. That is for our union on the top up here, which is our delivery hose going into the transmission, which we're going to take off and try and get a little bit of extra fluid out of there. I've got a couple of washers, one for the union at the top, one for the sump at the bottom. At the back there, I've got a 8mm socket and just a small flat blade. That is for the mesh filter down here on the bottom of the transmission. We're going to pull out, we're going to give it a clean and just inspect that as well. Got some penetrating fluid which I've sprayed on all our connectors just to hopefully ease that off a little bit for me. And obviously my oil catcher pan at the bottom there, which it's going to hopefully work and stop me getting messy. Alright, first things first, we are going to fire up the car and leave it to idle for a few minutes, getting that transmission fluid nice and warm and hopefully assisting that in draining out. So we're going to start by removing our drain plug at the bottom of the transmission. That's our 14mm hex here. Now, a little tip, if you want to appear to be quite strong on videos, loosen it off first. Otherwise these things can get really tight. But watch this, you see, look at these muscles, watch. No problem. Okay. So I'm going to loosen it off. The plan was just to loosen that. Things don't always go to plan, so that popped out quite easily. While we're waiting for the oil to drain out, I'm going to unscrew the filler cap. That is a 12mm. So our 12mm hex just about slips in there. As you can see with the cap, you've got very limited room. So you need to have quite a short tool to be able to do this. Again, these get very tight. Check out the guns though, not a problem for me. There we go. Let's take that. The other connection I want to take off is right at the top here on top of the gearbox. So this is our filler hose. Banjo connection here. I'm going to take this off. This is the 22mm spanner. The reason I'm using a spanner is we're right underneath the exhaust muffler here, so you can see I've got very little room, so we need a spanner on that one. Again, it can be quite tight, so we're going to take that off. The recommendation from Ferrari is to remove this, blow some compressed air up the pipe and hopefully expel a little bit more transmission fluid from our drain hose down here, drain hole. Again, guess what I did earlier? Yep, that's nice and loose. I'm going to just take that off. Let's just remove my finger now. Let's have a look. The other one with the connector. Just put that all together. Don't want to lose that. Good, good, good. All right, so let's show you the connector. Oh, actually, I think you can see it on there, can't you? There you go. Let's get a zoom in on that one. So we're going to blow some air up there and hopefully get a little bit more fluid out from down here. So to try and get the final bit of fluid out of the car, Ferrari recommend removing this oil delivery pipe at the top and putting some compressed air, firing some compressed air up it, hopefully to expel the final part. I don't actually have an air compressor here. I'm going to just see if I can rig up this, improvise a little bit and see if this, by turning it on, will do it. No idea if it'll work, but let's try it. So it's rigged up. All I need to do is turn it on. Let's see. Oh, it works! Look at that. Improvisation at its best. And there you go. I love it when a plan comes together. That is the tip of today. If you don't have an air compressor in your garage, a can of this stuff with the little hose connector for a few quid is a perfectly adequate workaround. Cool. Now we're going to take out the filter down the bottom here. So that is going to require our 8mm socket. So we're going to just take out the little bolt at the bottom. Then we're going to use our little screwdriver, just help lever that out. That's our filter, so I'm going to clean that up with some degreasant now and let it dry out properly, and then we will start putting it back together and start the refill process. Just installed the new washers for my banjo connection at the top. So we'll get our 22mm spanner, put this back in place. Next I've just lowered the car at the back, taking it off axle stands, and you can just see a little bit more oil just trickling out. So we're almost ready to start refilling. To do that, we need to fill in from our hole here on the side. The problem being is if you look, there is very little distance between here and here, so you're not going to be able to really get your oil in very easily. So the way I do it is I come in from the top. If you look down there, you can just see the filler hole. Right, we've got quite a distance between the top here and down to our hole. So, a little tip. Second tip of the day. You guys are lucky. Right, so I take about 45 centimeters, just standard garden hose, whack in my funnel at the end, slip that down here, come down under the car, and here, see, perfect. So it's the morning of day 2. I'm not taking a break, I'm literally about to start. I left the car overnight, and there's a reason for doing that, and I'll show you exactly why. I planned this job over a couple of days. Just to quickly show you, I left the gearbox draining overnight, and that's how much extra I got out of the car. So it takes a while, and it's well worth giving yourself plenty of time to do this job. So I've started to clean the filter up. Obviously inspect it, make sure there's no holes in the mesh, give it a good clean up. I'm going to replace the O-ring, the gasket on it, and then we're going to reinstall it. I'm just going to reinstall the filter. Just greased up the little O-ring inside. There we go. Alright, so that's nice. So our 8mm bolt. Okay, and we're just going to torque that up. Now we're ready to reinstall our new sump plug. I'm going to put a new copper washer on that. Now, very, very important. The factory manual says to tighten that to 75 Newton meters. That is completely wrong. It is way, way, way too tight. You need to be at least half that, probably about 30 to 35. Let me show you an old one. That was torqued up to 75. Fortunately, it stripped the thread on the sump plug and not the gearbox. Do not follow the service manual. It is way too tight and it will do that. So, new copper washer, new sump plug. Let's install it in the car. Still got a couple of drips of oil coming out. So, new copper washer, new sump plug. Let's just screw it in by hand to start with. And we'll tighten it up. So everything's back in place, our filter, our sump plug, so it's time to start refilling it. I have measured everything that came out of the car and it's just shy of 3 litres. With a little bit of spillage, it is about 3 litres, which is kind of what I expect. So let's start the filling process. So what I'm going to do is put about 2.5 litres in to start with. We'll then use our gearbox transmission dipstick, take a measurement, let it all settle, fill it up a little bit, just gradually, until I'm really at max net level. This is where I like to pretend I'm in the film Cocktail. A long pour, a little swirly whirly. Got to add a bit of fun to these boring, mundane tasks. To check our levels, we take the gearbox transmission dipstick, put it in, and you rest it, you don't screw it all the way in. Check the levels, and fill up as need be. Now the final thing I will do is I will drop the car off axle stands back flat on the surface, take my final reading before I put all this back together. So that's the gearbox transmission oil change complete. Let's move on now and do the engine oil. I'm going to get under the car again. We have 10 litres of the Shell recommended oil. Let's see how much comes out of the car. We'll follow the same process and replace with some new stuff. So first of all, there are 2 different drain points on the 360 to do the engine oil. Number 1 is here, and let me give you a close-up of that one. That's really accessed better from the back of the car. So here's one drain point here. Again, it's a 14mm hex for this sump plug. And the second one is up here. We're talking about this one here on a slight angle on the front of the block. So we're going to drain from both plugs. Again, I'm getting the engine up to temperature, oil up to temperature, which will help assist removing it from the car. So I'm going to start at the back of the car with my 14mm hex. Remove this one. I've loosened it up already. What I'm going to try and do is just loosen that and see if it will drip out a little bit. There we go. A bit of a drip. Thick black goo. I'm just going to let some of that go. There we go. There we go. Nothing on the floor. That's great. We're now at the front of the engine block. Let's do the other drain plug. This is a 12mm hex. I don't know why Ferrari use different ones. So the back is a 14, the front is a 12. It's also a good idea, I always use just a breaker bar. Sometimes these things can get quite tight. So I'm going to try and do this without causing a massive oil spill. Basically one-handed. Okay, here we go. Okay, good. Right, let's get our oil pan in place. It might get a bit of splashback on the screen here. I'm going to try and do the same thing again. Just loosen it off, let some drain off. Take a bit of pressure off. Let's see if this works. Nothing so far, a little bit of a drip. There we go. And gradually take it out. Voila! So we're going to leave that to drain for a while, and then I'll see how much comes out. While we wait for our oil to finish draining out the car, I'm going to remove the filter. That is just two 10mm nuts. And that's our filter removed from the car, so I'm just going to give that a clean up like I did with the transmission gearbox one. Replace the O-rings and then refit it. So while we wait for the last few remaining drops of oil to come out the engine, I'm going to change the oil filter. To do that, I'm going to use my special tool, which clips on the end there. We ratchet that off. You don't actually need one of those, you can use a cheap version of that. Just handy for me to do it. So let's go ahead and change our oil filter. Our filter on the coupe, so the Stradale, the modern version, is located down here. It's not the easiest to access. Again, on the Spider, it's even harder. You need to remove a couple of extra bits. So let's go ahead and get in there. So I'm going to come in from the side here. It's quite tight. It's quite hard to get the actual tool on there, but it'll take a little bit of time, and it comes off nicely. And that's our old filter. So let's start installing the new one, and that needs to tighten up to 25 Newton meters. So I'm going to start by smearing a bit of fresh oil just on the seal. Then I'm going to install it, tighten it by hand, and then just nip it up. Now we're ready to start putting it all back together. So sump plugs, new washers, refit the filter, the cleaned out filter, and then we'll start refilling the car. And again, guys, very important, the service manual is wrong. Definitely not 75 Newton meters. So I'm just reinstalling the filter. That's all cleaned up now. Just going to nip these bolts up. Next, I'm going to measure exactly how much oil we got out of the car. To do that, I'm just going to do an old-fashioned method. That's 1 litre. Borrowed it from the kitchen, don't tell. Scoop it, measure it. I'm hoping 9 or 10 litres. Now we're ready to start the refill process. So we're going to remove the dipstick, place the funnel there, and start filling. So we managed to get just under 9 litres out of the car. Again, the longer you leave it, the more you're probably going to get. If you can leave it overnight, ideal. So we're going to start the refill process, start putting some fresh fluids in. So I've stuck about 8 litres in now. It's better to really just take your time, do it slowly. You really do not want to overfill one of these engines. So I'm going to fire up the car, let it warm up, and just take a few readings and just gradually top it up to max level. Okay, the car is flat on the ground now. I've loaded it, it's nice and flat. I'm letting it warm up. We're going to check the oil level, but while it's down there, we're also going to look underneath the car and make sure there's no leaks from any of those sump plugs or the filter. Okay, so just to cover all the bases on this video, the correct way of checking the engine oil on a Ferrari 360 is you will run the engine up till the oil temperature is roughly around 80 to 90 degrees C, so you can take it out for a drive. Then the car needs to be on a flat surface. You then come in here with the engine still idling. It's not idling in this case because of video purposes, you won't be able to hear me, but with the engine idling, you come in, you unscrew your dipstick. That, to get your measurement, it just sits on the neck there. You don't re-screw it, it just sits on the neck. Pull it out, you check your dipstick for the level and top up where necessary, yeah? Engine idling, flat surface, up to temperature. That is it. Okay, so that is a wrap for the engine, gearbox, transmission, oil change on the Ferrari 360 series. In the next part 3 of this video, I will be continuing with that major service, or annual if you want to use it for that, on the 360. So that is going to include things like the filters, the other fluids, everything else that we need. In part 1, we've done the cam belts. Part 2, we've done the engine and gearbox oil. And in part 3, we're going to do the rest of the items. So join me then. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider doing so. And I'll see you soon. Ciao for now.